Hi, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a journal flip through video, but first things first. So today we're going to be flipping through my entire reading journal. She's about to go into retirement, which is why I wanted to do a whole flip through, because starting in 2026, I'm going to be using a new journal, and I wanted to go through this whole thing and cover my entire reading journey, basically. I only started getting back into reading again as an adult in 2023, and so I've been tracking my reading ever since then. I've gone through a few different iterations of tracking my reading. Anything that I started doing in a previous journal, I have in this folder. So we're gonna go way back. We're gonna be looking at basically my entire reading history from July 2023 till now. This is like such a weird and janky way to show this, but I didn't keep the previous journal. I literally cut out the previous journal and just kept the pages from it. But I didn't want to just throw them away and not track those first few months of my reading, especially because I read some of my favorite books ever in that time. So I'm gonna set this aside so you can still kind of see the complete picture. This was the first ever journal that I did for reading, and I was still trying to figure out at the time what I liked and how I liked to lay everything out. But in July/August, I read 5 books, and the first book that I read was The Witcher, The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I had a hard time with this book just because I was reading it over the span of several months, so I didn't really read it in one go or anything like that. It just took me a really long time to get through it, and I was also comparing it a lot to the lore that I know of The Witcher from the games. I would revisit this series, but I just had a hard time with that one. Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. I don't plan on reading anything else by Sarah J. Maas, just because I don't agree with her politics and her depiction of people of color and things like that. So this was the one and only Sarah J. Maas book that I've read. But moving on from that, The Night Circus, one of my favorite books that month and of all time. I still, to this day, love The Night Circus. I still, to this day, would give it a 6, a 10, a 20 stars out of 10. I love it that much. And I definitely do plan to reread this. I think that I'm just kind of waiting for like the right time, whatever the right time is. And I think this was the book that really fully grabbed me back into reading and enjoying reading again as an adult. And I have to thank this book for that. Next, I read The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. This one was a bit of a rough one. I did not have a good time with it, especially after something like The Night Circus that I loved so much. It was a little rough, but it's been a long time since I read it, so I can't really remember all the things I didn't like about it. Moving on from that, Gideon the Ninth, my love, my darling, Gideon. I have kind of made it my whole personality at this point. It's going to be an eternal favorite. Looking at the stats, I read 3 of these as physical books, 2 as ebooks, 2 5 stars, 1 3 star, 2 2 stars, 2,028 pages, again over kind of like a month and a half. And the best and longest book that month were Gideon the Ninth, and the worst and shortest book were The 10,000 Doors of January. So this was my first reading spread, and from there I just kind of tried to tweak and optimize it as my journaling taste changed and my needs changed. So we're gonna keep going. Oh right, I forgot September was on the back of that one. So moving on to September, I really liked the kind of theme with the leaves on this one. It's still very simplistic at this time. So in September, I read 4 books. I read Dracula, which I gave 1 star. Now, do not come for me, please. I just don't think I'm a classics reader. I struggled a lot with this one, not even necessarily because of the plot, but I just struggled a lot with the writing, the epistolary nature of it. I don't really tend to like epistolary stories. So yeah, please do not come for me about Dracula. I'm sorry. I read Harrow the Ninth and Nona the Ninth in September. After reading Gideon, it just consumed me. I read these like basically back to back because I could not get enough of this series. And I still can't get enough, and Electo the Ninth is still not out. Aside from these 2 and Dracula, I read Cinder by Marissa Meyer. This one was okay. It was just a little bit too like formulaic, and the writing style was really predictable. I didn't really love that one either. And I haven't revisited the series since then. So moving on to the stats, 4 books, 1,865 pages, half and half for the physical and ebook, 2 5 stars, 1 2 star, 1 1 star, and then best book and worst book, of course. Yeah, the longest was Harrow the Ninth, which was 510 pages, which is still one of the longer books that I've read. So now flipping this over and moving on to October. I don't know why this page is longer longer and bent. I don't know what to tell you. I have the spider webs on it, this like stained paper. And I read 6 books this month, which up to this point was the most books I'd read in one month. This month, I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. It was fine. I was really just blown away by the setup of the whole thing and the way that it was told with this kind of Groundhog Day scenario. And just the way that we were tracing all these different plot threads throughout the repetition of this one party, this one night, was really cool. And I hadn't read anything like that up until this point. So this was really like my first murder mystery, basically. Well, unless you count Gideon the Ninth as a murder mystery, which I do. So it really wasn't my first. But that's besides the point. Next, I read Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This one was fine. I struggled a lot with the writing towards the end because it started to feel everything but the kitchen sink kind of writing. Like everything was happening so quickly and it just felt like the pacing went from really slow and meandering in the beginning to just like absolutely breakneck. And it just didn't really fit the kind of cozy atmosphere that the book had set up. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, I gave 4 stars. I really liked this one. I know that it's not the most like groundbreaking. It's not the most like I almost said earth-changing. You guys know what I'm talking about. I read Girl Serpent Thorn by Melissa Bashardoust. Sorry, that's probably really wrong. This one is, I believe, based on Middle Eastern folklore. I don't really remember a whole lot about it now. I did like it a lot at the time. The magic and the world building were really interesting, the way that it was established, so it was pretty good. All right, now this one, don't even wish that I had read because it's by Neil Gaiman, and if you aren't familiar, Neil Gaiman is not a great person who has done some really not great things. But yeah, I don't want to talk about Neil Gaiman anymore. That is the one and only book I've read by him. Next is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sulin Tan. I loved this one. Gave it 5 stars. This was the only 5-star of the month. I really liked it. And it is a love triangle. I'm not really a love triangle person, especially when it's not a triangle. It's like a V. Like, why can't the guys also be into each other? Missed opportunities. But I still think it was a really great story and I'm glad I read it. Probably want to reread it at some point and see if it still holds up. So like I said, I read 6 books this month and it was 2,207 pages. 3 were physical and 3 were ebook. 1 5-star, 3 4-stars, and 2 3-stars. Best book was Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Worst was Uprooted, which honestly I could have probably said it was Coraline. So now we're talking about November, which you can clearly see. I read a lot in November. This was probably the most I've read in one month. It might even still be the most I've read in one month ever. It was 8 books in a month. I'll have to look. We'll see, but I'm pretty sure this is the most. So in November, I read The Spellbreaker Duology by Charlie N. Holmberg, which is a really good historical mystery with an element of fantasy in it because our main character, who I don't remember her name, is a spellbreaker where she can literally see the construction of spells, the knots and things that kind of form the structure of a spell. And her whole thing is that she can spell break. And that's a really handy skill to have, but also a dangerous skill to have. But so the whole thing with this duology, I'm pretty sure that the love interest is a spellmaker and she's a spellbreaker. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a minute since I read this duology, but I did really enjoy it. I read Heart of the Sun Warrior by Sulin Tan, which is the sequel to Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and I really loved it. I think I preferred the first one. I definitely want to reread the duology and just refresh my knowledge about it because I don't really remember everything that happened, but I really did enjoy this one. Next, I read The Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Sugimura, which is a Japanese translated fiction, and I don't really remember much about it. I didn't really love it. It has something to do with a mirror dimension where children can go and hang out with this fox masked girl in the mirror, and she challenges them to find a key or something, or find a wish, find keys to make a wish. I don't know. There were some things I didn't like about it, things that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It was still a very whimsical, like kind of Studio Ghibli-esque time. Next was A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I did not read this version of it. I just printed this cover because I really liked it. This is the Indie Pub cover, and it is still so goated. I do not know why they didn't publish traditionally with this cover. It is so superior to the traditionally published cover, which I'll put like somewhere over here. But I did think this was just okay when I read it. I think in hindsight, I like it more than I did when I read it. Now, if I were to reread it, I'd probably give it a 4. Oh, I remember what it was. that was the only thing that rubbed me wrong about A Dowry of Blood. Okay, so next I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this for a book club, and it was fine. I think I would have liked it probably more now than I did back then. Next I read The Echo of Old Books by Barbara Davis. This was a book that I read, and I don't really remember much about it in hindsight. I think it has something to do with a woman who can read the history of a book, like see into the past and see who read it, or like sense something about the person who read it before or the person who last held, or I don't know. It's so back in my memory at this point. I just remember liking it a lot. And then I read The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This book made me so mad. I really did not like reading this. All I remember is hating the husband character so much. Like, that's the point. But I also didn't like the main character, and I didn't like the reveal at the end. All I remember about this book was laughing my fucking ass off at the Aunt Adam chapter. I don't remember anything about it otherwise. So that was everything I read. The vast majority this month were ebooks. 5 were ebooks and 3 were physical. I had 3 5-stars, 1 4-star, 3 3-stars, and 1 2-star for a total of 2,946 pages. The best book was Heart of the Sun Warrior. The worst was The Perfect Marriage. No surprise to anybody. Longest was Heart of the Sun Warrior, and shortest was Dowry of Blood. Okay, so next we are getting into December 2023. I really liked the spread for this one because I had these adorable stickers. They have like a holographic shimmer, and then the candy cane paper and the colors. It was really, I just had a good time with this one. But looking at what I read Six of Crows this month. A solid 5 stars. It's still probably one of my favorite YA books. I really loved Six of Crows. Fantastic cast, fantastic plot. Crooked Kingdom I did really still like, but there was just some things about it that I found to be really like far-fetched or ridiculous that were happening later on in the book. And I also didn't feel as emotionally invested in something that happened as much as I wanted to. It just didn't hit like that emotional chord that I wanted. Then I read The Grimrose Girls, which I gave 2 stars, and honestly, in hindsight, I should have probably given even lower. This one is just a fantasy retelling, I suppose you could say. Basically, just imagine a private school that has like a bunch of different princess-inspired characters in this girl clique, and there's a murder mystery, I think, but there was some like kind of icky representation of queer and trans characters, racism, racial stereotyping as well. I just think this was icky, and I wish I gave it a 1 star. That was The Grimrose Girls. I wish I didn't read it. Then I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, which I gave 4 stars. It was really solid. I did not have this edition again. I just put the cover I liked. At this time, I was just putting the cover I liked the most, if there was like multiple versions of a cover. Then I read Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I really liked this one, and in hindsight, I keep saying that, but in hindsight, I kind of wish I gave it a higher score. At this time, I wasn't doing like half stars or anything like that. I think it would have been a 4.5 if I were, and I did like it a lot. Really creative world building and a really interesting narrative style that I think was really, really funny. The narration that was coming from a different character was just hysterical. It had such a like Princess Bride kind of feeling to it with the humor, and that was the point. Part of the point was in the author's note he mentioned that he was inspired by the Princess Bride, and it shows. It was really, really great, and actually I would love to get the Dragonsteel edition of this book and read it again. Then I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. I gave this one 3 stars. It was fine. If I had read them when I was younger, it probably would have been much more like earth-shattering for me. Okay, so this is the end of 2023. This was my wrap-up page that I did. So this was just listing my top books of the year, in which I chose The Night Circus, Gideon, Harrow, and Nona the Ninth, of course, Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and Heart of the Sun Warrior, the Spellbreaker and Spellmaker books, and Six of Crows. Summarizing my reading for like July through December, I read 29 books from 24 different authors, 11,655 pages. Considering I only started reading again in July, I was pretty proud of this 29, but that was the wrap up for 2023. This was the transition page that I did from 2023 to 2024. I set my reading goal at 45 books. Okay, so next we're going into January 2024, and as you can see, around this time is when I started to get much more detailed and ornate with the journaling. So this was a really great spread. I still really love it. So in January 2024, I finished the Cruel Prince series. So I read The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing, which I also gave 3 stars each. To me, 3 stars is like not that bad of a ranking. Like obviously a 3.5 would be like middle of the road, but a 3 is still fine. But I remember when I updated my Goodreads and gave these a 3, my friend commented, she was like, oh, so you hated these. I'm like, girl, a 3 isn't hated. If I hated it, they'd be a 1 star. What do you mean? But no, a 3 star is fine. Like, they're perfectly fine. I still have those books. There's a lot of books that I've given a 3 star that I don't keep. But honestly, they were fine. They were good. I think I would have liked them, like I said, a lot more if I was a young adult at the time. Then I read Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This one, in hindsight, probably should have given a lower rating, actually. I don't think I enjoyed this one anywhere near as much as a 4 star would indicate. I was really actually kind of disappointed by this one. Then I read The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. This one I gave 4 stars. It was good. It was very, like, Studio Ghibli-esque. It was Korean mythology based, which I really did enjoy. I think it was very fun and whimsical, but it did feel a little bit more like middle grade. The writing and kind of the characters just felt like they were much younger than they were. But it was still really, I mean, the setting is gorgeous. Like, the setting where we were was really, really gorgeous. Then I read Bitterthorn by Kat Dunn, which I loved. This one is sapphic, it's gothic, it takes place in a creepy, crumbling castle in these mysterious woods, and there's this, like, witch who lives in the castle, and I don't remember exactly how this situation happened, but I think, like, our main character is going to be, like, a servant for this witch or something like that. I need to reread it, but I really loved it at the time. Then I read What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, and this one was a letdown. Unfortunately, I gave it 2 stars. I was really disappointed by this one just because everything that was happening in the plot and, like, the coincidences and conveniences that were happening to kind of, like, progress things and to get the story where the author wanted it and to get the characters where they wanted them, I just thought there was, like, way too many moments where I was like, this feels so convoluted. But I'm sure it's not as bad as I remember it being, but I was pretty let down about it at the time. So in January, I read 6 books for a total of 2,177 pages. Again, half and half with physical and ebooks. I had 1 5-star, 2 4 stars, 2 3 stars, and 1 2 star. And this is where I started tracking genre, just to see kind of what genres I favor. So I had 4 fantasy, one that I specifically listed as mythic fantasy because that one was A Girl Beneath the Sea, which touches on Korean mythology, and I wanted to indicate that in some way. And then 1 historical fiction. The best was Bitterthorn, the worst was What the River Knows, the longest was Ruthless Vows, and the shortest was The Queen of Nothing. So moving on now to February, this is the second to last spread of this weird style. So don't worry, we're going to be going into this journal pretty soon. But this is my February theme. It's very Valentine's Day-y, as you can see. So this month was a pretty mixed bag of reading for me. I read The Gilded Wolves and The Silvered Serpents, both of which I gave 3 stars. I think that to me it just felt like a not as good version of Six of Crows. Like, the heist group felt like very derivative of Six of Crows. I'm pretty sure Six of Crows came out first. I will verify that, but to me, it just felt a little bit like derivative. I really just remember having a lot of problems with the puzzles and the mysteries that happen in this series. I didn't even read the 3rd one, but I just gave up. But they were, like, comically simple. The characters would drag out the solving of these puzzles for so long, and it was, like, comically easy to solve these things. Like, I don't even remember what it was, but there was a situation where they were, like, talking for pages and pages about, like, this symbol and what the symbol could mean. And I was like, girl, it's literally the most obvious fucking symbol in the world. What are you talking about? Then I read A Winter's Promise, and I really did not like this book. I really did not like it. The way that characters were described, the way that the plot was described, just the things that were happening in this book. The characters were, like, insufferable. I just did not buy that they were going to be a couple. I found them all insufferable, and I just remember constantly fixating on the way that the author described the male love interest. Like, the love interest of this book had, like, the Allie Hazelwood effect. Every male love interest is, like, 6+ feet tall, and the main character is, like, this little tiny puny girl. And this is exactly what happened in A Winter's Promise. I just remember reading this one sentence where something about his long limbs unfolded from underneath the desk. What the fuck do you mean? His limbs unfolded? I just still remember to this day, like, being just so fed up with the way that the love interest was described and just how insufferable everybody was. I hated this book. I'm so sorry if you loved A Winter's Promise. I'm really sorry. Then I read, thankfully, 2 5-star books. I read The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, Miller and Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. I loved both of these so much. The Song of Achilles was really great. I think I read this for a book club. And then Juniper and Thorn I recently bought a physical copy of it because I loved it so much when I read it, and I want to reread it eventually. I think that this book did not work for a lot of people, and I think people have a lot of criticisms about it that are totally valid. However, it worked perfectly for me. I don't know what it was about this when I read it, but it was just the perfect thing that I needed. Read 5 books, 2016 pages, 2 physical, 3 ebook, 2 5-stars, 2 5-stars, 2 3-stars, and 1 1-star. 3 were historical fantasy, 1 was fantasy horror, and 1 was fantasy romance. I like to specify not just fantasy, but like what kind of fantasy. It's obvious what's the best and worst book this month, I think you can tell. And then the longest was A Winter's Promise, and the shortest was Juniper and Thorn. So now we can get into the last spread of this cursed format, but this was my March spread. So I had a lot of really, really good reads this month, and then a few not so good reads. So first I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This book, I can see why people love it, but I think that something about the plotting, the pacing, the character building, and the writing was just not there. It just kind of felt like everything but the kitchen sink, especially when they introduced vampires. Then I read The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. I also didn't really like this one. I think that, I don't know, I can't really, like in reflection, I don't really know what was happening with the characters that I didn't like. I can't tell you. I don't really remember. I just remember I really didn't like it and didn't want to continue with the duology. Then I read Slewfoot by Brahm. This was great. I really, really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. Gave it 4 stars. Then I read the entirety of the Bear and the Nightingale series in 1 month. I really, really enjoyed this series, and clearly I read it all in one go. I gave Bear and the Nightingale 4 stars and then 5 stars to the sequels. They were fantastic. I think that the series as a whole is really, really solid. I think it's a really great example of kind of like a more epic scale fantasy, but it's still very approachable. In my opinion, it's very approachable. I really liked the Slavic folklore. That was kind of the focus of this. The characters were really great, and I bought special editions of the series to have on my shelves, so clearly I liked them a lot. So stats-wise, I've read 6 books, 2,178 pages, 1 physical, and 5 ebooks. I had 2 5-stars, 2 4-stars, and 2 2-stars, 3 historical fantasy, 1 fantasy horror, 1 fantasy romance, and 1 just general fantasy. So my best book was The Winter of the Witch. The worst was The Stolen Heir. At some point, I just started doing only like best, longest, and shortest. Anyway, this is the last of the weird pages. So we'll just put that back in the pocket. We can move on to the actual journal spreads now that are in this journal.
Several days later.
Hi, so it is an entirely different day now. I have a chip on my thumb. Please do not pay any attention to that. And we're going to carry on with the rest of this video. However, we are going to need to pick up the pace because I already have like 50 minutes of footage and we're not even into the rest of 2024 and 2025. So we're going to go a little faster through everything. But anyway, let's talk about April. So in April, I read 7 books and I had a little bit of a variety of reads. In April, I had some pretty good ones. Of course, like The Starless Sea is one of my favorites. Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher was really great. And then I had some not so good reads like The Scarlet Alchemist. Honestly, All Systems Red, the first book in the Murderbot series, I really did not enjoy that much. I only gave it 3 stars. But some of the other books in this series I absolutely adore. I read Artificial Condition right after this, and I liked that one a lot. In hindsight, I probably would have given it a 5. And then the next 2 books after Artificial Condition, well, that's a spoiler for the next month, but I really loved them too. So I gave Best Book to Tales of the Celestial Kingdom, but I think that's just because of the love that I had for the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology. And I just kind of like was coming off of the high of reading like another short story collection in that world. But actually, The Starless Sea is the best book I read this month. So this is where I started implementing the calendar of my start and end dates. So I track the date that I started the book and the day I finished it. I'm not tracking like the days I actually read it. I just kind of wanted to see how long it takes me to finish a book, like on average, or just kind of like in general. So this is when I started doing that and trying to pick, colors that match the theme of my page. This turned out really, really nice. I think that the colors really work together. Some months they don't turn out so nice, but that's okay. So at this point, I'm still doing the genre and rating bars. I really like this method and I continue to do it for a long time. Getting into May books, do you see a little bit of a theme so far with this page? 4 murder Murderbot books. And like I said, I really loved Rogue Protocol and Exit Strategy. They're probably my favorite in the series, but honestly, Artificial Condition from last month is also a favorite. I liked Network Effect. I thought it was good. I didn't like Fugitive Telemetry, but I think I read it out of reading order. Well, I read it technically in the publication order, but I have since told everybody that I ever see talk about Murderbot that you should read Fugitive Telemetry before Network Effect, because timeline-wise, it takes place kind of like between these two books. So I kind of wish that I had read that in the middle. And then I gave Sorcery of Thorns the best book of the month. I really loved that one. It was a really, really great read, and it's a really entertaining premise. Look into that if you like a good fantasy, a librarian fantasy with sentient books. It was a really great time. Onto the book stats. You know, it's a calendar. For any books that I don't finish in the month, I do this little like carryover thing, and I just say still reading, or I'll do it in the beginning of the month with the date that I started it. It's just for me. It doesn't really quantify very much because I don't say like, oh, how long did it take? It took me this many days. I don't write that anywhere, but it is nice to see like I finished Fugitive Telemetry in 2 days. It is short. It's a short novella, but it's still cool to see that. Although these two colors are so similar looking back. Anyway, moving on to June. I really love the spread for June. I also think this is when I started arranging the books by highest rated to lowest rated instead of just kind of the order that I read them in. So I go from, my 5 stars to, in this case, a 3-star. But I had a lot of really great books this month. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, I love. Strange the Dreamer is still probably one of my favorite YA fantasies, and I still think of this world all the time. And The Unmaking of June Farrow, I probably was a little generous giving it a 5, but at the time, I don't think I did half-star ratings. Probably now I would have given it a 4.5. Ember in the Ashes, The Last Day of the Flower Bride, kind of a miss for me. A Master of Jinn, I really like the premise, but something just kind of went like unraveled and went crazy towards the end that I didn't really like. And then System Collapse, I really didn't like the Network Effect System Collapse kind of like arc of Murderbot. Honestly, I only own volumes 1 through 4 because I like them the best, so I only have the first 4 novellas and then I don't even own the rest. I'm still gonna read the next one when it comes out, the 8th book. June was a really great reading month. I read 2,718 pages, which is a really good number. On this page, I have these cute little character stickers. They're kind of holographic, if you can see that. Really cute pastel colors on this page. Honestly, this was a really, really fun spread. I like it a lot. I started this one May 19th, so just finished it literally the first day of the month. And it's just nice to see these kinds of things. So at this point, I have my mid-year wrap-up. I like to do this every year. I do like a mid-year and an end-of-year wrap-up because I just like to see where I'm at in my reading at this time. So I have the number of books I read at this point, which was 36, like till the end of June, 36 books, 12,448 pages. The best ones were The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, The Girl in the Tower, and Juniper and Thorn. And then I also have these graphs of the number of books per rating and the number of books per month. So I can just kind of see, I gave 13 books 5 stars at this point in the year, which is insane. That is so high. I think in the beginning of my reading career, I was really, really generous with these 5 stars, and now I'm definitely a lot more stingy. I still give a lot of them, but I'm definitely stingier. And then I thought this was also interesting because I track how many books I read each month, and there's definitely a pattern. It goes 6, 5, 6, 7, 5, 7. At this point, I was reading a lot of books per month. Like the 7-book months are really, really good. At least for me, that's really good. It's just funny to see like the pattern. It's very consistent. So the next thing I like to do for my mid-year and end-of-year wrap-ups is my book awards, which are basically just superlatives that I give to certain books. And I make up the categories kind of year to year. So I started with these ones. This was my first book awards. But the categories have changed a little bit since then. Not a whole lot, but if I'm kind of changing in my reading, I might add categories or change them or take them out. So, I don't have like best action / combat anymore, but that's because I was reading a lot of these at the time. And best novella, sometimes, I don't really read much in the way of novellas, so I might not even have this category anymore, But I gave best world building to An Ember in the Ashes, most unique magic system, Sorcery of Thorns, best romance, Strange the Dreamer, most impactful plot, which is a little like weird way to say it, but basically like the story that kind of hits me the most really, really, really sticks with me, I guess. I don't know. I gave it to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Best action / combat, I gave to The Winter of the Witch, which is the 3rd book in the Winter Night trilogy. There's a lot of combat and really cool fight scenes in this one. Best atmosphere, I gave to The Starless Sea, hands down, the best. Probably still one of my favorite atmosphere books. And then best novella, I gave to Rogue Protocol. And so moving on to July, I really like the blues in this spread, and this like holographic wave is really cute. I had these circle stickers that I stamped the number on and then stuck to the page, and I like how that turned out. I don't think I ever did that again, but it looks kind of neat. It reminds me of like the typewriter keys, you know? This month I read some really great books and then some not so great books that I didn't really think worked for me. I really loved Muse of Nightmares and You Mean the Nightmare Painter. These were so good. They still hold up to me. And then yours truly, I probably would not have given this high of a score by my standards now, but I hadn't read a lot of romance yet at this time. I think this might have been like one of my first like contemporary romance, so it is what it is. Pan's Labyrinth and What Moves the Dead did not work for me. I have never seen this movie. The book wasn't as freaky as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be more twisty and more fucked up. I did like some of the things that were going on in there. And then What Moves the Dead, kind of the same. I wanted it to be more fucked up. I wanted more horror. I wanted more like discomfort, I suppose. And I was kind of let down a little bit by that. But it does have a really good atmosphere, so I will give it that. The stats, start and end page, nothing too special about this one. Literally, these colors all kind of look the same on camera, but I promise to me they also kind of look the same, but they are a little bit different. So let's continue on to August. I like the color scheme for this one, and this is when I started doing half stars. So I read A River Enchanted, the best book of the month, still really great. I also read A Fire Endless, which is the sequel to A River Enchanted, and I still really liked that one, and it was the longest book that month. Then I read some books that I really, really, really did not enjoy, and that is The Midnight Library, Paladin's Grace, and Salt and Broom. You guys have probably heard of these two, but I don't know if many people have heard of this one. It doesn't have a whole lot of ratings, but I was just drawn in by the cover, and I think at the time I was on Kindle Unlimited or something like that, so I got it on there, and I really hated this. It was just really bad. I don't really even remember how to talk about it and how much I didn't like it, but the plotting and the pacing was just a mess. Yeah, I didn't like that one. Paladin's Grace, I did not dislike as much as this one. It was more just that there was like tedious things that I was getting so fed up with that like, I don't know what it was. It was just completely ruining the experience for me. And I think the one that like really did it for me was that the female character would always describe the male love interest as smelling of gingerbread, like all the time. Every time she interacted with him, she would mention gingerbread. And I think I looked it up by the end of the book because I was like, how many fucking times does this lady say gingerbread? Because I had the ebook. So I looked in there and I think it was like 50 something times or 60 something times that the word gingerbread was said. That's too many fucking times. I don't know. For me, that just like completely soured the experience, which is such a small, tedious thing. But like, I don't know. I tend to fixate on small details like that. And I definitely fixated on that. I don't know. Some people really like this series. I'm just probably not going to pick it back up. The Midnight Library, I think, is full of really, really unhealthy stereotypes and messages about mental health and suicidality and depression and medication that I do not think is good or helpful. It can have a good message for people, I suppose, but I think it's extremely reductive. At least for me, I really thought it was reductive. If you liked it, that's totally okay. It's just, that's my opinion. But anyways, moving on to book stats. I changed it up this month. I threw the calendar down here. This was one month where I was really not happy with the colors I chose, and sometimes that happens where I just don't have colored markers that match like the papers and things that I have. I don't start looking at marker colors. I do papers first. So this was just one month where I really did not like the colors that I chose, but that's okay. Wow, I read 4 fantasy romance this month. That's crazy. Good mix of ratings as well. Let's continue. September. I like the design of this page with the daisies and these kind of different shades of green. House of Hollow was really, really great. Honestly, I would give it probably a higher score now, but I really loved that one, and like super botanical horror kind of vibes. If you enjoyed Don't Let the Forest In, which I'll put over here, you should read House of Hollow. They feel to me like different sides of the same coin. I really, really enjoyed the botanical horror and just the imagery in House of Hollow. So good. And some really creepy things happen. I read God Killer. I don't remember liking it that much, but apparently I did. In my head, it's more like a 3.5. Circe, Half a Soul, Belladonna, Carmilla. I gave Carmilla a very low score, but I don't think that it's like a bad book by any means. I do appreciate what it did to inspire so many other amazing vampire works since then. But obviously at the time that it was written, it was super like not acceptable to be queer. And so it kind of has some bad views and bad takes on queerness and like the way that the main character feels about her own identity. Obviously this was written like in the 1800s, so things are super different, but I appreciate what it did, but I just don't think it went fully there, and I don't like the self-hatred that the main character had about her identity. I read a lot of shorter books this month, 6 books and only 1,817 pages, so I think a lot of them were a little bit on the shorter side. So then I've got the calendar and the rating in the genres: fantasy, romance, fantasy, mythic, fantasy, horror. That's pretty much my bread and butter, so I didn't have any 5 stars this month though. Now on to October. I love how this one turned out. I love a spooky page. I love a spooky theme. So for this month, I read 7 books, 2,021 pages, and I did have one audiobook that was like 6 hours. This was a good month for spooky reads, even if I didn't give them like a super high score. I still think about a lot of these actually. So The Tainted Cup, A Long Time Dead, which was the best book and the longest, which in hindsight I would give higher than 4 stars. My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna Van Veen. I did like this one a lot. I do think that her newer release, Blood on Her Tongue, is better, but this one is still really fun. We've Always Lived in the Castle, probably the only classic that I've actually really enjoyed, and I know 3.5 doesn't seem like that high. 3.5 to me is I still enjoyed it. Annihilation, 3.5. The Invocations and Cursed Cocktails, I gave 2 stars. I really didn't like these. Can't even remember what I didn't love about the Invocations, but for Cursed Cocktails, I didn't like that it felt like a carbon copy of Legends and Lattes, but with cocktails. And again, this hit on a pet peeve of mine that I really hate, and that is like egregious repetition of one descriptor for somebody over and over and over. And in this case, it wasn't the use of gingerbread, but it was more of a action that people were doing. Everybody was winking at each other all the time. It felt like every page someone winked. I don't know why that bothered me so much, but it's the same thing as the gingerbread thing. I don't know what it is. I fixate on those things and they ruin everything for me. Overall, felt like it was just kind of like a copy. I don't know if many people have even heard of this one. It doesn't have that many ratings on Goodreads. I mean, if you want more Legends and Lattes, but you want it like with cocktails and stuff and like male gay romance, maybe pick it up. Book stats. I had a lot going on this month because I was reading a lot of books, so I had a lot of like overlap going on. Of course, I read a lot of horror, some sci-fi, some mystery, and it was a pretty good month for ratings. I mean, I did have 2 stars, but the 3.5 stars and the 2 4 stars is still good. November, I also read 7 books. I read This Is How You Lose the Time War, which I still adore. This book is so good. It was the shortest book. It was only 4 hours on audio, and it was the best book. I read the first 2 books in the Veronica Speedwell series, which in hindsight, again, how many times can I say that in this video? I think I would have given A Curious Beginning maybe a 3.5 and given this one 4, which I did give it 4, but like I would have dropped this one a little bit because I did like A Perilous Undertaking a lot better. I had Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which I think this was my first read of this book. I believe that I read it in 2025, again for a book club. None of This Is True, The Spell Shop, and A Study in Drowning, which I really did not like. I was really let down by this one. I'm not even gonna go into it. So happy for you if you loved that one though. The atmosphere is really good. Good month for audiobooks though, 16 hours. I think this is when I really started to get into audiobooks. I've kind of dropped off about that since then, but I was really into it for the time. Also, I really loved the theme that I had for November because I had like the witches and little familiars, the mushrooms. It's so autumnal. 4 4-star books this month, which was really good. 3 historical fiction. I do not like how I did this, but I couldn't draw the line and then write A Perilous Undertaking on it because it would have just not shown up against the brown, so I did that instead. I don't like it. Sometimes that happens. I make a mistake and then I'm like, oh, I didn't really love that. It's annoying that things are like, oh, there we go. The bubble's gone now. Some of the adhesive I think just gets weird over time. Now we're in December, so I've got this, Christmas theme again. I like this like little postage stamp style that I did for this. Again, it was a good audiobook month, 21.5 hours, 2,143 pages is still a lot. So I read the first 2 books of the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and A Close and Common Orbit. I read both of those this month and adored them. Obviously, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet was a little bit less enjoyable than A Close and Common Orbit, but I cried at this one. I really loved the second book in that series. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which I listened on audio. A Torch Against the Night. I think I listened mostly on audio, but then I finished it as an ebook. I also read One Dark Window. The Elven Days of Christmas was a holiday rom-com, and it was actually really cute. I did really like it. And then I read Bonesmith, which I really didn't like. Again, plotting and pacing, and some character direction kind of issues. For the calendar page, I really love the direction with this one. Again, it's the gorgeous, gilded stickers and green and red, silver and gold. It's so festive. It's so fun. And for this month, I turned the bars sideways. Sometimes I do that just based on how much space I've got. I think I started doing it sideways from then on. I do like it better horizontal. Also, I like this one where I said I was still reading Masters of Death, but then I said, just kidding, I DNF'd because I made this page and then, a few days later, I decided to DNF it. But yeah, sometimes that happens. You just got to make a little amendment. Also, I smeared the text right here, which you can't see, but I can see it, and I don't like that.
I am mildly irritated, Robert.
So going into the 2024 wrap-up, this one I did a little bit differently than the mid-year wrap-up because I only did the number of books per rating. I didn't do the number of books per month. And I added a chart tracking the format of the books, so ebook, physical, and audio. Okay, I don't know why, but on this page, it doesn't want to focus if I move my finger over there at all. So I am not going to move my finger onto the page, but it's cool to see the number of ebooks that I read. I read so many ebooks, and this is when I got into audiobooks, so I only read 3, but it's still nice to see that. 74 books in a year. This was a really, really good year for me. I try to keep hitting that number at the very least each year. We'll see how I did with that in 2025. At the end of the year wrap up, 24,532 pages. That's a lot of pages. And I had 19 5 stars, 19 4 stars, which again, I was being so generous at this time. The majority of my reading was very positive. Going into the top 10, so this is a page I only do at the end of the year wrap up spreads. So it's sometimes hard to narrow it down to just 10, especially when I have 19 5-star books in a year. But I chose The Starless Sea, Sorcery of Thorns, Strange the Dreamer, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, A River Enchanted, A Close and Common Orbit, This Is How You Lose the Time War, The Winter of the Witch, Juniper and Thorn, and You Mean the Nightmare Painter. These are all so phenomenal. For me, I would absolutely reread them. If I didn't own them when I read them, I definitely own them now because I wanted to reread them again. So I really love these books and they still hold up. And then updating on the 2024 book awards. So I still have the same categories, but what I do is if something has stayed the same book and it wasn't replaced by a different book, I indicate that it is undefeated because it has stayed in this position from the mid-year to the end of the year. So for best world building, I gave it to The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I love the world building in the Wayfarer series. The alien life forms and cultures are so advanced, just so well thought out, so detailed. Most unique magic system I gave to One Dark Window because I really liked the tarot card inspired magic system. I think it was really neat. Best romance I gave to A Long Time Dead. Most emotional/impactful plot, I did add the word emotional because like I said, I cried. So I gave it to A Close and Common Orbit. Best action remains The Winter of the Witch. It was still the best action of the year. Best atmosphere remains The Starless Sea. And then best novella I gave to This Is How You Lose the Time War. I was debating putting this one as the best romance, This Is How You Lose the Time War, but then I decided if I gave it to A Long Time Dead, I could also still put this book on my awards by giving it best novella. So yeah, this is a really, really solid stack up. I still agree with these picks, honestly. So now I have kind of a transitionary page into 2025. I have this fun like New Year's Eve kind of theme going on, and this paper, this girl looks like she's gonna be, running through a castle for like a New Year's Eve masquerade ball or something. So I thought that was fun. And now we're into January 2025.
Several days later.
Hi, so it is once again a different day. I keep getting stopped in the middle of filming, but anyway. So for this month, I had these foam 3-dimensional stickers that I had gotten from, I think, a raffle or something, and I wanted to use them. I don't really like these kinds of stickers now because they're just so 3-dimensional. They're just way too thick, and they bulk up the page quite a bit, so I wouldn't use them again, but they are really cute. January was a really big month for audiobook listening. I listened to a little over 24 hours of audiobooks, and I had a good reading month overall. We Could Be So Good by Kat Sebastian. I really loved this one, and it actually remained one of my best books of the year. Spoilers. So even though I read it in January, I still ended up loving it by the end of the year. The Galaxy and the Ground Within, which is book 4 in the Wayfarer series, absolutely adored it. Little Thieves, Anatomy, a Love Story, both adored those. And then The Bone Houses, I gave a 3.5. I didn't love this book. I think it had really good ideas, but there was something about the execution I didn't love. Emily Wilde, Encyclopedia of Fairies. I know this is an unpopular take, but I didn't really like it that much. I'm not sure what it was. I might have just not been in the right mood to read it. I think it was fine. It was just, a 3 is fine for me, but it wasn't like a favorite, and I didn't continue the series. And then The Last Gifts of the Universe is just a sci-fi novella. It was just a, like an okay time. It was honestly a cover read. I saw the cover at the bookstore and I was like, this is really pretty. I did end up listening to this on audio, so obviously I didn't buy the book. Onto stats. Again, more of these 3-dimensional stickers. I like this cat with the ball of yarn. Stuck with the blue theme, all the different shades of blue and kind of grayish blue. So this one I wrote resumed on this date. I think I must have read it in a previous month and then stopped reading and then picked it back up. So I think that's why I did that. So sometimes if I make a really bad mistake on the page or like totally mess up the calendar, I'll just take another sheet like from the back of the journal and cut new piece of paper and then glue it on and then redo the calendar. So that's what I had done here. That's why there's like this little paper seam. It's hard to notice unless I point it out. But for me, I hate seeing that I made a mistake on the calendar. I'd rather just like tape over it and do another one. So now February, I absolutely adore this spread. I love the theme that I picked. This is probably one of my favorites that I've done. You can see better now when I angle it like that, kind of the holographic elements. But I wanted to do a Queen of Hearts kind of theme. So I had this sheet of like Alice in Wonderland inspired stickers. And then these frames, one of my friends actually stamped these and then cut them out and sent them to me. So I liked that they kind of felt like mirrors or portals, and that felt very Alice to me. So I put those in here. And I had a really good reading month as well. Forget Me Not by Alison Derrick was the best book. It was also an audiobook. I really loved the audiobook. The Darkness Outside Us, The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, I really enjoyed those. Immortality Love Story, I really enjoyed. I think I actually am being too generous with Watermoon, giving it a 3.5. In hindsight, it'd probably be like a 2.5. I think that it had the Studio Ghibli vibes, and it was a really interesting concept with some of the locations that we went to and the magic that was in there. But it did kind of feel like just a series of vignettes that were like designed to be as Studio Ghibli-esque as possible. And the Insta love, I was not here for. So honestly, in hindsight, I would drop that down. The stats page, I also love, love, love. I wish these stickers weren't. It's kind of annoying that stickers start to do that as they age, but that's okay. So again, with the Alice theme, I love this teapot sticker with the little cards, pocket watch, and then the rabbit. This is just such a good theme. Honestly, I really, really enjoyed this one. I want to do more like Alice in Wonderland inspired pages just because it's such a compelling theme, and I do have more stickers as well. Oh, and I wrote this one here. So I had a little stamp that was like a tag, and I wrote "Love Me," very much like the, like the "Drink Me, Eat Me" tags that were on things in Alice in Wonderland. I just thought because it's a Valentine's Day, like Queen of Hearts theme, it made sense to put that. Obviously, I read some romance, only 2. For March, I did this really pretty green theme. It has butterflies and these little dangly elements. I just thought were really pretty. This month was a little bit of a rougher month because I did have a couple of really good ones, but then I had some books that I didn't like as much. Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, I absolutely adore this book. And this was my reread of Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So the first time I listened on audio, and this was the time that I read it physically, and I annotated as well. Needy Little Things, I listened on audio, and I did really enjoy the audiobook. It's a nice YA mystery. The Brightness Between Us is the sequel to The Darkness Outside Us. I didn't enjoy this one as much. Probably would have dropped it down to a 3, but it was still good. You Should Be So Lucky, I didn't really like, and I Who Have Never Known Men, I didn't really like. I know it's controversial. A lot of people really love that one. I have, a lot of different like conflicting feelings about that one. On the stats page, I have this little fairy. I thought he was so cute. Some more butterflies and the little dangly golden elements. I love, love, love the color scheme of this month. It's just so satisfying. In April, I wanted to do something inspired by this paper specifically I'd gotten at Michael's. I think the lemons with the like purplish blue was really cute. So I was trying to kind of center the design around that. This is the month that I started the Heartstopper series. So I read book 1 and book 2. They're out of order because again, it's ordered by rating. So, I liked this one more. I liked volume 2 more than volume 1. These were kind of my first exposure to like graphic novels, and I think they were really fun. Foul Days was not bad. It was pretty interesting. Crier's War was pretty good. A 3 doesn't feel like it's pretty good. I honestly probably was being a little too harsh on it at the time. It's probably more like a 4, maybe a 3.5. And then Silver Under Nightfall, I gave 2.5. I did not enjoy this. I talked about it kind of in depth in a previous video. I don't remember which video, but I'll put the photo like on the side over here. And I'll put it in the card as well. I went more in detail on what I didn't like about this and why I had the feelings that I had. As far as the stats page, I did enjoy kind of what I was doing with these little flower details and like this film reel accent. Also, I know graphic novel isn't like a genre in itself, but I just wanted to mark somewhere that, I read graphic novels, I suppose. So I did put them as their own genre. It's more of a format thing, I suppose, but I don't have a separate chart with my formats on it. So that's why I put graphic novel there. I also do the same thing with manga. For the month of May, this is my mom's birthday month, so I wanted to kind of do a page that has some of her favorite colors on it. So she loves flowers and she loves purple. So I wanted to kind of do that for her. I really like how this one turned out with the little like dotted kind of lines going through. I don't know. Sometimes I just like to fill up the empty space with things like that. I haven't done that in a while though. I should probably start doing that again because I think it's really cute. This was a really solid reading month though. I read 7 books in May. I had some favorites as well. ゚ Oh, she's not glued down very well. ゚ I loved. It's just one of the most unique books that I've ever read. And The Phoenix Keeper is more of just a cute romance with a little bit of fantasy. It's definitely not on the same like level of a 5-star as ゚ but I still really enjoyed it. The House of Salt and Sorrows I really liked. A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher I really enjoyed. I don't have the best track record when it comes to T. Kingfisher. I think the only books that I've read from her that I really enjoyed were Nettle and Bone and then A Sorceress Comes to Call. So she's kind of hit or miss for me, but this one was a hit. I did really like it. Two Twisted Crowns, so that finishes up the Shepherd King duology. I did like that one a lot. Pet, I listened to this one on audio. I liked it, but it just felt like almost too short. Like it didn't get as deep into the world building and the setup of everything as I would have liked, but it was still a really good takeaway message. And then Monstress, which is a graphic novel, and that one was fine. I didn't continue the series just because I didn't really feel compelled by what was going on. It just felt like a little disjointed. The art style was really, really great, but narratively and like world building wise, it just felt a bit disjointed. For the calendar, read a ton of fantasy this month, and I know magical realism kind of is a subset of fantasy in some ways, but I did put it as its own category, and I did not love that I had to put graphic novel up here instead of down here, but I had already done the arrow, and I think I wrote romance a little bit off to the side, so it just kind of was like a series of things that made me have to do that, but sometimes you just have to improvise and do what you can. June, so once again, a really fun rainbow page. I got this paper from Michaels. It's just very fun, retro. It gives me like roller skating, roller rink vibes. I thought it was really cute, and of course I brought more of these little character stickers in because they're adorable, and I had a few more of these speech bubbles, so I was able to use them this month. I don't have any more though, so I'm kind of bummed. I want to get more of them. This was a really great reading month. I read Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. This is one of my favorite books of the year. I never stopped talking about it. I read Heartstopper Volume 3, which I loved. I think I might have cried at this one. Volume 3 or 4. I might have cried at both. The Fifth Season, a phenomenal book. I don't remember giving it a 4.5. I thought I gave it a 5, but it's really, really great. This one was a Persona 5 manga, kind of like a spin-off manga, and it was fine. I just love Persona 5. I'm a huge fan of the Persona series, so I wanted to give the manga a try. I didn't continue the series though. I just think that it was a cute little like one-off thing that I wanted to read. And then All Boys Aren't Blue, I did not rate because I don't like to rate nonfiction or memoirs. I haven't read that many of them. I might have only read this one memoir ever, but I don't rate them just because it feels really strange to rate someone's lived experiences or how they write about their lived experiences. So I just don't rate anything that's nonfiction. On the calendar stats page, again, absolutely obsessed with. I love all the colors that match up with these colors pretty great. The title card got a little messed up here. When I was stamping, it didn't like fully stamp properly, but it happens, you know. So now we're into the mid-year wrap-up. So this is the same kind of thing as I did last year. It's pretty much exactly the same in terms of layout. So I read 36 books by this midpoint in the year. By midpoint of the year before, I read like 34 or 35. So I was definitely very on point and consistent with my reading from the previous year. My favorites of the year so far were Hungerstone, Piranesi, and Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. And then I still have the books per rating and books per month. I had a lot of 4 and 4.5 star reads, a lot less 5-star reads. I was being much less generous now. And overall, it was still like most of my ratings were very high. And then again, with the same pattern as the year before, I have 7, 5, 6, 5, 7, 5. So my reading really tended to fall in the 5 to 7 range. Next, we go into the book awards, same as last year. I did change the categories a little bit from 2024. So I added best cast of characters and best audiobook. I don't have best novella because I didn't really read a lot of novellas at this point. So I do change the categories based on how my reading has kind of gone for the year. So best world building I gave to The Fifth Season. Most unique magic system I gave to Watermoon. Best romance I gave to One Last Stop. Most impactful story and best audiobook for Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. The best cast of characters, The Galaxy and the Ground Within, which is Wayfarer's book 4. And best atmosphere, Piranesi. Okay, so in my last journal flip through video, which I'll link in the card and I'll put the photo on the side, I'm pretty sure that it went from the beginning of the year to the end of the mid-year wrap-up, and I think everything after that point I hadn't filmed. So I think that from here on, this is all new stuff that you would have only seen if you watch my journal process videos. So for July, I participated in Katie Colson's Sunrise on the Readathon, which is a Hunger Games themed readathon, and I had so much fun with it. It was honestly a blast, one of the best experiences that I had last year. So I wanted to base this entire spread around the Sunrise on the Readathon logo, which is this cute bunny. I also wanted to base the color scheme on the cover of the Hunger Games, which is black, white, and yellow. So I really love how this turned out. I cut out these letters from magazines so I could do this kind of like ransom note inspired title. And then I wanted to put the symbol of the readathon on the page somewhere, but I was running out of space. So I decided to make this little like flip door, and it has my stats on the other side. I read 8 books in July. I read 2,164 pages, which is great. I think this might have been my highest reading month of the year. July was a fantastic reading month. I read One Last Stop, Don't Let the Forest In, Heartstopper Volume 4. Loved all of those. The Hunger Games, obviously, loved. Walking Practice by Dulcie Min. I love this one. It is the weirdest, most fucked up time, but it's so good. Our Wives Under the Sea. I was just in the perfect mood for this one, and I'm so glad that I read it when I did. I think I was just in the mood for something melancholy, and this definitely delivered on that. I read Legendborn, which I didn't love. I still thought it was good. I did talk about that one in depth in a video. I don't remember which video, but I'll put it somewhere. I got cold, so I put on a hoodie. Also, there are children playing outside and sledding in the snow. So if you hear yelling or whatever, or thudding, just ignore that. So the last thing that I read in July was a manga. It was the first volume of Skullface bookseller Honda-san. This is just a funny little time. I loved the art style. I didn't end up keeping it. I did unhaul it. I just didn't really think I was going to want to continue. It just kind of felt like a series of vignettes that was fun and definitely relatable if you've ever worked retail. I honestly don't read a ton of manga. It was just something that I got when I went to the bookstore because the cover and the art looked really, really funny. So for the July stats page, I really love how this one turned out, except for the green. I don't know what compelled me to put green on this page, but this was a really great month with ratings. Like I said, 3 5-star reads and 1 4.5, 2 4 stars, 2 3 stars. I did read quite a bit of horror this month, and again, I did have 2 graphic novels / manga, so I suppose what I could do, this is kind of an idea that I might implement in my next journal spread for January 2026. I could always do like a little crosshatch and just make a key like graphic novel / manga, and then the solid color is just like a novel or novella, because then it would be actually representation of both the genre and the format. Just little ideas. Moving on to August, I didn't love this one. It was another Alice in Wonderland theme. I kind of wanted to do like a tea theme, very much inspired by A Song for the Wild Bill and A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is about a tea monk and a robot. So I did want the little teapot with the leaves kind of falling down, teacups and things on the side. This was a very high number of books month, but low number of pages, because 3 or 4, actually 4 of these were novellas. So I was reading a lot of books number-wise, but they were all very short, and I think this one was actually an audiobook as well. And on top of those ones, I also read A Treacherous Curse, which is book 3 in the Veronica Speedwell series, and I read The Geographer's Map to Romance, which is the sequel to The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, which I'd read earlier that year. On the stats page, I had a lot more fun with this one because I could kind of integrate more colors from the paper. So I was able to bring these pink flowers in, and I had this teacup stack sticker that I really wanted to use. It feels like it fits really well with this theme. I just think it's crazy that I read this novella literally in one day. It was only like 100 something pages, I think, but I could not put it down once I had started it, so I literally read it in one night. A lot of these, again, were novellas, so I read them in a short window. 4 days for this one, 4 days for this one, 2 days for this one, etc. In September, I was participating in the Magical Readathon hosted by Book Roast, so I wanted to make a very whimsical, magical theme for this month, and I love, love, love how this turned out. I've got a little candelabra, an hourglass on the top. They both have the kind of holographic glass look to them, which I fucking love holographic in stickers. Like, oh, it's so good. This paper in the back with the constellations has gold as well. I didn't intend originally to do these little like bits of paper with the star ratings on them, but I think I had done some stamping underneath, just smeared or something, and I had to fix it. Like I was trying to salvage it. So I ended up using the same paper that I used for the other accent details and just putting my star ratings on there, and I actually really like how it turned out. I also used a little bit of distress ink to kind of like weather the edges of that, Weather the Ages. Weather the Edges. Oh my god. By the way, if you're a fan of kind of the vintage rustic look, you want to distress the edges of things, I got this archival ink and I have a bunch of different colors of it, and by a bunch I mean 3, but there are a lot more colors that you can get. I have a light brown, I have this one, and I have a black one that I use for all of this stuff. I use it for stamping as well. So you can use this to distress edges and you can use it for stamping. And to do the edges, I have this little tool that I got from Michael's as well. And you attach one of these foam pads to it, and then you tap it on the ink and you just kind of like run it along the edge of the paper. I do really like using this tool for some of my more vintage spreads. But getting back to the reading journal, in September I read Catching Fire, which is just an iconic, absolutely amazing time. Continued Heartstopper with volume 5. A Girl Returned. This was something that I read for a translated fiction prompt, and I really loved it. It was actually heartbreaking and really, really great. The Starving Saints, I love. Just a really great, trippy, kind of mindfucky horror, and I love bee motifs in general. Ever since I read The Starless Sea, I just love seeing bees because it makes me think of the Starless Sea. So this also had the bee motifs. Lots and lots and lots of bees. Once Company, I actually read this on the recommendation of another YouTuber that I follow, Elise's Reading, and I really enjoyed this one. I read this for one of the prompts. I don't remember what the prompt was for the readathon. The Last Hour Between Worlds and To Be Taught If Fortunate, which this one was a little bit of a letdown for me. I'm a huge Becky Chambers fan. This one was a little bit of a disappointment. It was a really great reading month though. 7 books, 2,055 pages. It was a really great month for the readathon. And then on the calendar, I again was pretty happy with how this turned out. Some of the colors I'm not super sold on, but I still thought this page was really cute. Especially I loved the little key sticker. On to October, so of course I had to do something spooky. So I have these fun gothic papers, a tarot sticker, this little witch character, and then I did the flip door again because I kind of didn't have enough space. So I put the number of books, number of pages there. But I read The Six Deaths of the Saint, which is a short story. It's literally 31 pages. It was my best book of the month, though. I did say best story. It does feel weird calling it a book because it's 31 pages, but it was phenomenal. Garlic and the Vampire. This is a middle grade graphic novel. It was really, really adorable. Blood on Her Tongue, I loved. Witch Hat Atelier Volume 1 is a manga, and it was really fun. It was really a great time. If We Were Villains, I did enjoy. M is for Monster was a little bit of a disappointment, but I liked the art. This is also a graphic novel. And then I know this one is probably my most controversial opinion of the year, probably, but I really did not enjoy Blood Over Brighthaven. I talked about it at length in a video. I'll put the photo over here. I'll put the card. I really am so happy for you if you love this. It's just this one personally didn't work for me. Onto the calendar. I again had this really fun character. She's not a witch, but she kind of feels like vampire coded. Another tarot sticker. I really liked the color scheme of this month, but I do think this red is a little too crazy vibrant. I don't have anything more muted. This was also when I changed up the graphing style that I use. So instead of doing the bars with the boxes, I started doing bar charts instead. And I do like how the bar charts look. So I still have my number of books per rating and number of books per genre. It's just in a bar chart now. And again, I did categorize manga and graphic novel as its own genre, but going forward, I might change how I do that. And I did read 3 of them that month. It was definitely a heavy month for graphic novels. I did have a little mistake here that I covered with whiteout. Sometimes I use paper like from the back of the journal and cut it and put it there, and sometimes I use whiteout. It kind of depends. I know you guys probably don't even notice these things that I'm pointing out. It's just me being super critical of my own stuff. But I'm sure it's really not as big of a deal as I'm seeing. November, I wanted to do a really warm theme. I have this fun, like, vintage paper with the butterflies and these floral designs. And then I had this washi tape with butterflies on it. Is really, really pretty and ties the whole butterfly theme together. November was a good reading month in terms of how much I read, but it was not a good reading month in terms of ratings. I read Ray Bearer by Jordan Afueco, which is the best book of the month, and I still absolutely love. The Color Purple, I did enjoy. Rooster Fighter Volume 1, which is a stupid, goofy manga. Again, I just kind of pick up manga that are funny or make me laugh or potentially going to be very silly, and then I'll read like 1 volume of it, and I'm like, okay, that was fun. That was kind of Rooster Fighter. Wild Dark Shore was okay. I didn't like it as much as everyone else seems to. Same with Monstrilio. And then I read One Bad Night and Other Stories, which is a short story collection. It was an Aardvark box exclusive, and I had a really, really bad time with this collection overall. Most of the stories in here were disappointing, if not downright frustrating. There was only one story that I gave a 5-star in this collection, and that's what pulled the average up, because overall, most of my ratings were below a 3, if not maybe a 3 at the most. And then Mistress of Lies, I gave 1.5 star. It's probably my lowest of the year. I have another video, again, I'll put it somewhere, where I talk about this in depth and why I didn't like it. I'm really, really bummed that I didn't like it. It started off strong. It just kind of unraveled for me throughout. So again, if you liked it, I'm sorry. Moving on to the calendar. I had, again, a very big spread of ratings and also a big spread of genres, mostly horror and fantasy, which I'm not surprised, but having, you know, a classic and a mystery was nice. And now we're on to December. So of course I did a Christmassy theme. I printed out these letters from the Ransomizer, which is a website, and you can put in whatever text you want. You can tell it what colors you want, what fonts you want. So in December, I read Dungeon Crawler Carl, which I loved, Kindred, which was really good, Holiday Romance was really good, Mockingjay, which actually I enjoyed more than I thought I would. I technically have already read the Hunger Games series when I was younger, but I don't really remember how I felt about them, so I wanted to, you know, reread the whole series this year, and honestly, I think I liked Mockingjay more than I did when I first read it. It wasn't my favorite, of course, but I'm still happy that I read it. And then I read This Winter, which is a Heartstopper novella. It was okay. And then onto the calendar. I do love how this one turned out. I did make some mistake right here that I covered up. I think I had drawn an extra line as if there was going to be another week below the last week of December, and obviously there's not. So I had to cover that up and make it work, and I think I did make it work. So the next spread, which is the end of year wrap up, no one has seen because I did not post a journal process video for this, so this will be the first time you guys see it. So this is my 2025 year in wrap up. I did a musical kind of New Year's inspired theme, so I've got this paper in the back with like the fireworks and music notes. I got these 3D stickers from Michaels. They kind of suck, however.
It looks fine to me.
It's making me mad.
The adhesive on these was so bad that I would like put it on the page and it would just lift immediately. So I ended up using my double-sided tape, put more adhesive on it, and then glue it down, and then it stayed. But yeah, on their own, they didn't stay at all. I had this little like fake postcard thing from somewhere. I don't remember. It probably came with a pack of other things, but I thought this was a perfect time to use this. So I used this to put my totals. So 75 books total, which is one more book than last year, and 19,674 pages. So I read more pages overall in 2024, but I'm also factoring in, I read a lot more hours of audio in 2025 than 2024. Then I have my books per source, which is a little bit different. I did not do the books per month from the mid-year wrap-up, but I really wanted to show where I got the books from that I was reading. So I have the home library, which counts as basically any book that I own on my shelves, or even some books that I have bought digitally that I cannot borrow anywhere else. I also have a Spotify audio category. This is literally just from when I had a Spotify membership earlier this year, but I canceled it. I just wanted to show that I listened to some audiobooks from there. And then library loan / free. This does mean also like free with subscriptions. So it's technically not like free, but I think there was only 1 or 2 things that fell under this category. The majority of these were library loans on Libby or Hoopla or a physical pickup from the library. So I read 47 books from my home library. 11 of them were graphic novels or manga. The rest that I didn't do the math of are like novels and novellas. 6 audiobooks on Spotify. And then from the library, I read 22 books. So 1 of those was a graphic novel that I borrowed. And then 6 were audiobooks that I borrowed through, I think, Hoopla probably, or Libby. So this is just a nice way to see like the breakdown of where I get my books from and how I acquire them. You know, I'm not surprised that the majority of those were books that I own because I am a sucker for a good cover. So I do have a lot of books that I've bought that I read, but I was also using my library quite a bit as well. And then I still have the books per rating chart that I did from the mid-year wrap-up and last year's end-of-year wrap-up. So definitely a lot less generous with the 5 stars, like I said. I was giving a lot of 4 stars though, and a lot of 4.5s. I mean, 17 5-star books is still really high, but it's nice to see the majority of my reading was a 3-star or above. So on to my next page of the wrap-up, I have my 2025 top 10. So these were my 10 top favorites of the year. It was very hard to narrow it down to 10, but I chose Piranesi, Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang, Don't Let the Forest In, Raybearer, Hungerstone, Dungeon Crawler Carl, We Could Be So Good, the 5th Season, One Last Stop, and The 6 Deaths of the Saint. And yes, this is that 31-page short story. I did put it in my top 10. It was that good. And for the last page of this journal, I have my 2025 book awards. So again, this is the same kind of premise as the other ones. I added one more category because I thought having a nice solid 8 was more satisfying than having 7. So I have Best World Building, which is for Raybearer. Most Unique Magic System, the 5th Season. Best Romance, Undefeated, is One Last Stop. Most Impactful Story, Undefeated, is Bat Eater. Best Cast, I kept this category and gave it to Catching Fire. Best Atmosphere remains with Piranesi. Best Audiobook, I did change my answer to One Last Stop instead of Bat Eater and Other Names for Corazang. It was really hard to decide which one I liked better because they were the same narrator. So I was just thinking about how she narrated the characters in this one. There were many more characters that she had to differentiate their voices, and I think that she did a really good job with all the different accents she used. So I did pick this one after all. And then I added a category specifically for walking practice because it was in my head as one of the top books of the year, but not enough to go in my top 10. So I wanted to put it somewhere because this book is just sticking with me. It just will not leave my head. So I created a new category just for it, most mind-bending, which is the nicer way of saying the most mind-fucky. So I put that there. And honestly, there were a few other books that could have gone in this category. For example, Don't Let the Forest In could have gone in here, and so could have The Starving Saints. So there are a few books that I read this year that fall into the most like mind-bending, mind-fucky area, and I do love that area. And so that brings us to the end of this journal. So she's going to be retired now, and I'm excited to move on to my next journal, but I will be a little sad. I will miss her. So thank you so much for watching this flip through video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed seeing the progression of my reading journaling throughout my entire reading history, basically. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It means a lot to me that you're here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.